And welcome to RDA Coaches Corner. Today we have a very special guest, Johnny Lawrence, the self-development coach. He's a behavioral change coach from Cornwall. It's not far actually from where we are right now. Johnny, hi, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. We were both just talking about how pleasant the weather here is in Cornwall.
Yeah,
We like to
yeah,
tell
yeah, yeah.
everybody it's sunny all the time, but if we're being honest, there's a lot of rain.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, man. Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So Johnny, before we get into it, tell us a little bit about yourself, what it is you do. So just so the audience know, if anybody doesn't know, I say, if anybody doesn't know, you are definitely way more out there than what we are. So probably people already know who you are, but go for it. Just give us your little intro.
well, my name's Johnny Lawrence, as you say. I'm better known these days as the self-development coach. And the reason for that is because, well, it's one of the questions I'm sure is my mission is to help as many people as I can with their
Mm,
self-development. And people might say, well, what qualifies you for that? What is self development? How are you going to do that?
mm,
All of those different things. Well, I've had a lot of education. I went through a very long phase. I'm sure I'll go back through it again. Of being a course collector and learning.
yeah.
I have an unbelievable appetite for knowledge. I love learning. I love learning about all different types of things. One of my favorite moments is when I realize I don't know a lot about something and I'm about to find out. I love those
Yeah.
moments. I really do. I get excited. I've got lots of questions and I've learned over time to be curious and to be brave enough to ask those questions and to risk looking silly in the moment. So there's a lot of education that I've collected, degrees, courses, qualifications, certifications, and all of those things, and they're all very helpful and they all provide a lot of reassurance to others that I'm capable of doing my job. But what I've found is more beneficial is my experiences because knowledge is power, they say, but I'm not sure about that. I get it as a premise, but I think it's more that application of knowledge is power. It's about how you
Mm,
apply that knowledge. I know lots of people that have read lots of books, done lots of courses, but I wouldn't trust them to do the thing that they say they can do. So for
yeah.
me, I use my experiences and my education. And I believe that when education meets experience, it creates wisdom. And my experiences are, I've had some great experiences that I can pass on a lot of knowledge. But if I'm honest, the ones that stick, the ones that come with the most learning, have been the ones that have been not so nice. I was subjected to a lot of domestic violence and physical abuse as a child. And consequently, I ended up with an addiction later in life. And
Mm,
those two situations provided me with a lot of knowledge.
yeah.
so,
Yeah, yeah.
so between those two things, my education and my experience, I like to help people with their self development. And that means that I am inquiring into that person, trying to find out what they think about themselves, what they think about life, the meaning they've applied to things, and trying to see how helpful that is in order to move towards the goal that they want to move towards. So that's what I do now. And I do that through the podcast, the self development podcast. I do that through public speaking. I've just written a book and like quite often write articles. So I'm doing what I can
Mate,
to
you're
help
you're
people.
doing it all. That's I
Well,
mean
I'm trying.
that yeah, that I mean that's amazing. And thank you for sharing that about your past and your childhood. I know you've delved quite deep into that in a lot of your writings and your podcast. So obviously we'll tell everybody where to go at the end to go and check that out. But I guess just off the back of that, I know we've got a big set of questions here, but I just wanted to go off the back of that. What have you found specifically that like these experiences have taught you that you have could then wrap up and gift to somebody else? Like it's great to have all these experiences, but then like somebody just goes, "Well, does that mean I need to have an abusive childhood and be addicted to whatever these things to
Yeah.
be able to, you know, progress in life?" Well, obviously not. But what is it that you found has helped you? What have you taken away from those moments to give to? I know that's probably an absolutely humongous question because it's more than just one thing, but yeah.
I think a lot of the time people look at life um, and they look at these different experiences and they obsess over the differences. But for me, it's about what's the same,
Mm,
because if I can see patterns and I can see things that happen often, then I can say, well, what does that mean? What's the problem here? And I think for me, what I've come to realize, and I'm a coach, yeah, but actually what I am more is a truth seeker. And what's
Mm,
most important in the world and in anybody's life is what is true. What's true about you? What's true about
mm,
world? What's true about any situation? Because nothing is harder to accept in life than things that we don't want to be true. And we are masterful at creating all of these different narratives, selling all these different lies. Some people don't
mm,
like that word, but that's what they are. In order for us to buy those things back again. And I think quite often with myself and with others, what I learn is that people see the world first through their biases, and then they have they sort of devise a perception of what something means, and then they apply the meaning. You know,
mm,
if we look at that like, okay, I have my biases, and then I have the perception of the way I was seeing the situation, and then after those things, I apply a new meaning. Well, okay, what if you don't get past the bias part?
yeah, yeah,
What if
yeah.
we just assume that all things are this and we never get to the perception bit? Well, then we get stuck in a little bit of a problem, because quite
Hmm.
often those biases are going to creep up in many different ways, in many different incarnations, and cause us lots and lots of problems. And then we're going to blame others, and we're going to perpetuate that by getting stuck in a cycle of probably anger and blame, which is what I see a lot in people. And it's only when we
Mm,
stop for a moment and we go, okay, where can we take accountability here? Where can we start to look at things differently? What if those biases aren't true? You know, and it's more
mm,
curiosity that at that point. It's not about going, hey, you're wrong or right, because to me that doesn't matter. It's not about me. Even when I talk publicly, it's not about me being right or wrong. I don't have any interest in that. What I'm seeking is the truth. I want to know what is true. And if I'm wrong in what I say because I've done the wrong research or I've misunderstood something, put me right. I'm quite
mm.
happy to be put right.
Yeah.
I want to know what is true. I'm not trying to become a guru or an authority on anything. So yeah, for me, what's most important is what is true about something, what is true about somebody. You know, quite
Mm,
often I see people pursuing goals, and they say, oh, you know, I work really hard and I'm doing all the right things, but nothing's happening. And all too often I find out that they don't actually want to pursue that goal at all. Um,
yes. Yeah.
at all. Like they don't want that. They're doing
Mm,
it for somebody else or for some other reason. And I will tell you something, that won't work. You'll get a little way down the road, and it
yeah.
won't work. Whether that's weight loss, whether that's trying to start a new career, whether that's writing a book, whether that's moving house, changing partner, whatever it is in your life that you're trying to achieve, if you don't really want to do it, you probably won't. I think it's
Mm.
is it Henry Ford, whether you say you can or you say you can't, you're right.
There
You
you
know?
go. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Brilliant, man. Yeah, that's brilliant, and I love that about like seeking truth. Almost, it's almost like you're stripping everything back to raw materials, and then just focusing on bringing that awareness. Right? It reminds me almost like meditation. Like when
Mm,
people struggle so much with meditation, is they're trying to push their way into a certain. They're trying to feel something specific, when actually
mm,
meditation is just going, what's there? Like what's happening? What's
that's
coming in
it.
and what's going out? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
brilliant. So a big part of what you do is helping people create change, like you say, with what you're doing, and also finding the right change. Um, I guess it's good for people. You've had a lot of experience. So has there been a moment in your life where changing was necessary, but frightening, scary as change is? Um, and how did you overcome it? I mean, did you overcome it first? And what impact did it have on you? But not only you, I think it's really important for people to understand that what impact it had on the people around you as well, because that's another kind of side effect of this, I think.
I think my whole life I've known that I'm not the same as others. Now, I'm not
Hmm.
qualifying myself to be better or worse than others. I'm just saying I'm not the same. I've always had this, like I say, this thirst for knowledge. I've always really, really felt quite passionately and strongly about helping others. And because of my childhood and because of the things that happened, I had developed a, a consistent amount of very unhelpful and very unhealthy coping mechanisms. And one of those was alcohol.
Mm,
And the thing is about alcohol, it wasn't the solution, but it was a solution. It was a
Yeah.
solution to a problem. And the problem was I had an inability or an unwillingness to sit with certain emotions. And
Mm,
whenever any situations came up in my life that provoked those emotions, um, I wouldn't know how to cope with them. And alcohol helped with that. Is it a good
mm,
solution? No, it's not. It wasn't for me anyway. So many times in my life where I was trying to level up, if you want to use that term, or trying to move towards something that was important to me, I would have what I thought was self-sabotage. But
mm,
actually, I don't know how helpful that perspective is. I don't think it's helpful for anybody to tell themselves and to constantly reinforce to themselves that they self-sabotage themselves. It's just, to me,
mm,
that's a why, but why do that? You know, you don't have to do that. So why do that? So, okay, what's going on? Well, what's going on is I'm actually self-soothing. I'm actually feeling an uncomfortable emotion, and I'm trying to move towards something that feels more comfortable. Now, sometimes that comfortable thing, well, always that comfortable thing is something more familiar, right? But what's
mm,
familiar is not always comfortable, is not always good for us. Alcohol was mine. So when I drank alcohol, it helped, or at least it felt like it helped. So at some point, I knew that all of these things that I'd tried and failed at, and things hadn't gone the way I wanted to go, and I was very angry about all of those things, and I wanted to blame lots of people for that. But when it's all said and done, I'm responsible for myself. That's it.
mm.
You know, so
Yeah.
I knew that I had to stop drinking, and I really didn't want to. And I tried lots of different things, and it's quite funny, really. I went dairy free. I I I gave up caffeine. I gave up
Yeah.
gluten. I gave up all of these things and tried all of these things, all to avoid what I knew I had to do, which was to stop
Yeah.
drinking alcohol. Um, I
Mm,
tried I tried to moderate, didn't work. Um, I I tried lots of different things, and I got to a point where one day I had been with friends over the weekend, you know, barbecues, whatnot, all these different things, and we'd had a really good time, and we'd drunk lots of alcohol, and
mm,
I had spent Monday through to Thursday extremely anxious. But something about this was different. It was feeling like it was coming to a head, if you know what I mean. And I was
mm,
like, I need to do something about this. And I went and saw somebody, and I went for a process, and then ended up giving up alcohol. Now, I'm not going to say to you that giving up alcohol will solve all your problems. And I'm not somebody that passionately talks about everybody should give up alcohol, because I don't believe that. I think there are
mm.
people out there, you know, for example, I've got friends and we go shooting, and you know, on the way home we'll stop for a pint. They'll go home and cut the grass. I'll go to the off license, or at least I used to. So
Mhm.
now, when it comes to November this year, I've been sober for 4 years, and what I've
Oh, wow.
achieved in those 4 years is quite ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so for me, giving up alcohol was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. It'd been there for me through some of the hardest moments of my life, finding myself almost homeless at 16. Alcohol was there. Um, Putting up with a lot of different domestic violence situations and traumatic events that have happened, alcohol was there. So for me, it had always been kind of like that best friend, that person that never let
Yeah.
me down, that was reliable and all of those things. So giving it up was terrifying. And the first year was one of the hardest years I've ever been through in my entire life. But after that, I stopped focusing on what was gone and started focusing on what I could gain from life. And all of a sudden, I had more energy. I cared about more things. I had more time for other people, such as my boys and my wife. And I
Mm.
realized that there was so much more possible, you know? So for me,
Yeah, yeah.
it was about freedom. You know, I'd got myself trapped in this thing, and people say, "Oh, you know, you must really hate alcohol." And I don't. I'm grateful for alcohol because it was there for me through the times that I needed it. I just took it too far. You know,
Yeah.
I abused it. That's it. It's
Yeah.
like there's nothing wrong with alcohol as long as you don't abuse it, you know, everything in moderation, as they say. And I abused it because I was getting more and more, if you want to call it unwell, I suppose. You know, I was struggling a lot more with my emotions, and alcohol was helping. So for me, that was one of the biggest things I did. And I did that for myself. Yes, I did definitely. But I also did that for my wife and kids. And now I don't
Mm.
miss rugby games because I'm hungover. Now I'm always available to take the kids or my wife or whoever to places, you know, because I can drive all the time. and I'm just more present. And it's not a pretending, it's not an act like it used to be when I was hungover, where I had to put on a brave face and try. And with, as we know about tolerance, it's temporary, it's limited, right? So
Yeah.
now it's real, it's genuine, I care. And it's enabled me to have experiences that were really, really difficult, so that now when I'm talking to people, my empathy bucket is full. I can understand what it feels like. Life is a nightmare. It provides you with these impossible situations where it feels like you can't make the right decision no matter what you do. That's life. So what do you do in those situations? Well, you aim for the truth.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
mate, that's so interesting. I'm I'm really interested in your perception of alcohol actually, because it's very rare that you hear somebody not blame that thing, right? So you're taking that blame away from it. A lot of people say it was alcohol's fault, or it was cigarettes' fault, or it's fast food, or it's big pharma, or it's all of these things that are causing anything. But we can't control those things, right? There's not, I can't control alcohol in the shops, and you've only, I don't even know if it's blame, but you've only put that on yourself, right? And it's you that abused alcohol rather than alcohol that abused you, which is such a really interesting take on it that I don't think I've really heard before. How important do you think that is for people when it comes to change, to try and transition that perspective from that blame to then focusing on the only thing that they can control really is themselves, right?
blame is a game. It
Yeah.
keeps you stuck in a cycle, you blame when you start asking why, um you're usually going to find somebody to blame, and
Mm,
that's going to be somebody else, still their fault, or it's going to be yourself, and then you're going to go into a little pity party and start to perpetuate that. So for me, blame is not helpful. What is helpful is, okay, instead of looking at the blame, let's look at the impact. So instead
mm,
of blaming alcohol for all my problems, I looked at the impact that alcohol was having on my life. And it was that process that helped me put together a model that I use with some clients now. And I call it the 4 stages of behavioral change.
mhm,
And what that is the 4 A's: awareness, accountability, acceptance, and action. And what
mm,
that's a process that is helpful. So for me, you can't address a problem unless you become aware of it.
yes.
You just can't. And sometimes we think we're aware of the problem, and quite often people come to me and they say, "Johnny, here's my problem," and I'm like, "It's not your problem. That's a symptom of your problem." But I'm not going to tell them that, because who am I to tell anyone anything, right? So I
Mhm,
recognize that they're having a symptom of a problem, and they're doing that so they can avoid the problem, which is the truth. And
mhm,
my job is to try and mine for that truth and to figure out what that is, or to help them figure out what it is. The next part of that is accountability. Now, accountability is not responsibility or blame. It's saying, okay, here, where in this situation am I actually giving away my power? I'm waiting for
mm,
somebody else to do something because my ego tells me they should do it. They're responsible for it. They should do it. Okay, yeah, all of that is true, but they're not doing it. And you are the
mm,
person that's suffering the consequences. So are you going to sit back in your pride and your ego, which you got every right to do, or are you going to take some accountability here and just get the thing done?
mm,
Where are you going to take power back in your life? So now you're aware of the problem and you've taken accountability for what's fair within your life for you to take accountability for. Okay, what's next? Well, acceptance. And what that means is there are things in your life that it doesn't matter how much you want them to be different, or you work hard to change them, or you manipulate, or you do whatever you're doing, they're not going to change. They are what
mm,
they are, and it's not fair, and it should be different, but it isn't. And the more you obsess over those things, the more you're not getting on with what you need to be getting on with, which you are accountable for, or should be, can be accountable for. And then once you figured out what it is, you become aware of it, you've taken accountability for what you can control, and you've accepted what you can't. All of that process will lead you towards a set of actions. Now take
mm.
the actions.
Yeah.
Do the things. And you know
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
You might not be ready. It might not feel like the right time, but do something. And if it feels too big, make it a little bit smaller, you know? And if that feels too big, make it a bit smaller. because there's going to be a point where it's so small that you'll almost feel a bit silly for not doing it. Well, good.
Mm.
Let's get on with it.
Yeah,
You know?
man. Yeah, that's brilliant. I like it. It's quite often as well. I think the problem um, comes when people are seeking behavioral change in some kind of way, or they just read the information, right? So they'll do all the courses, they'll read all the books, but it doesn't matter if I read a book and do nothing. Yeah, if I can read all the books I want, but if I don't practice at least one paragraph in that book, it's not doing me any good. So taking that action is brilliant. But those 4 A's are I really like them. They're really good. And is this something that people can find, say, on your website, or if they want to take a little deeper dive into that?
Yeah, I've spoken quite a bit about it on different podcasts, and I tried to share that on my social. Um, I've written an article about it that will be published through the Coaching Academy next month, so
Awesome.
that can be found that way. But yeah, you know, going back to the original question, about blame, that process takes you away from blame and towards action. You know,
Mm,
blaming somebody else for your problems, I get it, is appealing. Yeah, and it buys you a bit of time. But what you're
mm,
doing is you're avoiding two things. You're avoiding making a decision.
mm-hmm,
You are avoiding something that's scaring you.
mm-hmm,
And to
mm-hmm,
some degree, you're avoiding an element of the truth, something that you don't want to be true. Now, what's important here is compassion and empathy. And it is important because some things are so horrible. I get the privilege of listening to a lot of people, and sometimes they tell me things, and I'm like, humans are incredible. What we can
mm-hmm.
endure, what we can go through, and still come
Yes.
out okay. People say, "Oh, you're so resilient." See, I believe resilience is a word that others use to describe someone who got through something, but that doesn't give any reflection of how they feel. Because I guarantee you,
Mm,
they don't feel like they got through anything. They feel like crap. So a better way of
mm-hmm,
looking at it is something called anti-fragility, which is a bit like what we do in the gym, right? We go in the gym and we
mm-hmm,
work out a muscle and we deliberately break it down so we can rebuild it stronger. And
mm,
resilience says I survived something. Anti-fragility says I got through it, I learned some stuff, and I'm better for it. You know,
mm.
and life is a nightmare. It will come at you with its arm around you and then jab you in the ribs. That's the
Yeah.
way. That's the way it is. And people go, "Oh, that's not a very nice way to look at life." Well, go around looking at life like differently, and you'll keep getting jabbed in the ribs and wondering why.
Yeah, I mean, whether as this we do I stress talk to a lot of the companies doing, and what I like to say is whether we like it or not, stress is coming, or negative situations, whatever we put, hardship is coming whether we like it or not. Is how we prepare for it or how we tackle it that's really, really important. You're obviously really passionate about this.
Love it.
You know, you can we can tell, right? You're obviously really passionate about this and helping people create change and navigate through that. What set you on this journey? Like, why is it because of your past experiences and the hardship you've been through? But what set you on this journey of helping people through this? Why are you doing this?
I've always been a lifelong self-developer. I love it. I love it. Like I said, I
Mm,
love knowledge and I love understanding human behavior. And I
mm,
obsessively read and watch documentaries and listen to podcasts. It drives my wife crazy. She's like, "Can you not just
mm.
read a novel on holiday? Why is it always got to be how to do this?" So I just
Yes.
like, it's just who I am. But I've learned so much over the years, and I constantly find myself wondering, why do people not know these things? Why do
Mm,
they not know these things? Why are they not taught at school? Is what I hear all the time. Whenever I present at schools or deliver lectures at schools, everyone's like, How did I not know this?" Because
mm,
people learn maths, history, English, geography, whatever it is, and then they go out into the real world, and we go full circle here, and they don't know how to apply what they've learned in life because they don't have any
mm,
self-confidence, self-esteem. They don't have any motivation. They don't know how to communicate with others. They don't know how to read social cues. They don't know how to do all of these things. So,
mm,
I've always been someone who's been there for friends and family over my life. Lots of people come to me for not necessarily for help. I'm not someone who likes to claim I have all the answers, because I don't. But what I am good at is I am good at being curious and asking lots of
mm,
questions. I am good at listening. I'm a keen listener. I like to listen.
mm,
I like listening to people and listening out for not just the words they say, but the gaps where they're clearly rethinking what they're hearing themselves saying. Sometimes you only know something when you hear yourself say it, you know.
Mm.
And I like to watch people's body language. I like to see where they do them little awkward laughs, or they cough, or their throat closes up, or just their behavior, what they're doing, you know, because that will
Mm.
tell me everything. Human beings are amazing, right? We talk lots of words, we say lots of things, but our behavior tells us what we're about, always.
Yes.
You know.
Hmm.
And so to
Yeah, yeah.
me, that's what it is. Is it to be able to do this job for a living, to be able to sit and listen to people and to ask questions and to learn about them while they are learning about themselves is an utter privilege. I didn't know it was a job I could do until I did, and once I did, I was like, I'm in. Let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah.
And as you say, I'm passionate, and perhaps that's why people latch on to some of the ideas I have. And again, I used to be really scared about expressing my ideas out there in the world. Um, but now all I'm saying is I'm looking for the truth. You know, my ideas are not fully formed; they're ever evolving, and people come along and you know, I have conversations with interesting people like yourself, and you ask a really good question, and I go, "Huh, I didn't think of it like that." And then my ideas evolve and change, and that's all
Yeah.
part of the process. And I try not to attach to things too much because it, and you know, one of the most dangerous things I think I can find myself in is when I say, "Oh, I know that." And life goes, "Oh, do you?"
Yeah. 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 No, you
I feel
don't.
like I'm going to offer you a situation that shows you that you don't know that at all. And it's like, right, cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the reason I'm into what I'm doing is because I've always done it. It's just now I've made it a job, you know.
Mm. Yeah. Amazing. So you've obviously worked with a lot of people all the time. We spoke earlier, not only coaching behavioral change, but PTing as well. So you've had a lot of experience with a lot of people. What have you found? And you may have already answered this in all we've been saying, but what have you found has been the main obstacle that holds people back from change, like across the? And I know it's very varied, but is there something that really strikes out to you that this is the one thing that people really should be focusing on, or this is the one thing that's holding people back?
Three things. The first one is making the decision.
Mm,
Man, people will avoid making the decision for lots of reasons, but mainly fear. They're scared they're
mm,
going to make the wrong decision. They're scared of what it might mean. They start forecasting and becoming fortune tellers, and then they're stuck in a pit of anxiety, and then they don't do anything. You know,
mm,
making a decision. And the thing is, life will generally escalate things until you get to a situation that's so unbearable that the change feels more comfortable,
mm.
which means you
Yeah.
will then make a decision. And then you will stand there and wonder why you didn't make this decision ages ago. Why did I let it get to this point? Well, that's what you had to do. This was the only scenario in which you were going to feel you could make the decision. But
Mm,
trying to make a decision about something, that's why coaching is so valuable, because my job, as I see it, is to help you make a decision, which is the first step. You know, okay,
mm,
let's put all the cards on the table. Let's see what the situation is. It really what the situation is, not what you want it to be or what you think it will be or what you're going to try and manipulate it to be. Like, no, what is the
mhm,
situation as it is now, and what's the decision that you need to make that's best for yourself and the people in your life. So that's the first one, is making the decision. The next one is something that people find difficult, accepting that change is challenging. It's hard.
mm.
Change is really hard. It's really,
Yeah.
really hard. There are going to be infinite moments where you want to give up. That and it will feel really compelling. Like you will start to build a really strong narrative to why you shouldn't do this thing anymore. I don't want to work out today. I don't want to have that meeting with somebody. I don't want to invest that money. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Yeah, cool. I get it. I understand. Maybe take a day off, you know, but don't quit. You know, don't
Mm,
stop. Like change is difficult. And I use this analogy of like somebody walk somebody stand me and somebody are standing on one side of a hedge, right? And I say everything you're looking for is on the other side of that hedge. Cool. So they walk up and down the hedgerow looking for a gap in the hedge. And I'm like, no, you gotta go over the hedge. Oh, but there's like thorns and there's like barbed wire. Yeah. So what?
yeah.
You want me to yeah, I do, yeah. But on the other side is exactly what I want. Yeah, but I don't want to I want to get hurt. I don't want it to be difficult. I want it to be easy. People spend a lot of their time looking for hacks and easy ways to do things that are hard. You
Mm,
know, So it's better just to get better at doing hard things than trying to find ways to make it easier, you know? So that's the second thing.
Yeah.
Make a decision, accepting that change is hard. And then the last one is something we've spoken about, you know, throughout the whole talk here. And that is that you have to always align with what is true.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
the people, places, and the things in our life, you know, they influence us. And sometimes that means you need to change friendship circles. Sometimes it means you need to be brave and leave an organization that you've been with for 20, 30 years. Sometimes it means that you need to
Mm,
get rid of something that's important to you or do something that feels really drastic, you know. But if it is
mm,
true, if it is aligning with what you know is true, if by doing that you make space for other things, then that's got to be the
yeah.
way forward. And that is scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Be
hugely scary.
Well, something that I
Yeah.
learned when I was a kid is that you know, I spent a lot of my time being scared. You know, my father was very violent and he used to beat and torture us as kids. And I spent a lot of time being scared, and that become my narrative for my life of like I'm a weak and fearful person. And then I remember my first day in therapy, and I made my therapist cry. There's a lady I worked with back in London, and she said, "It's funny, you sounded like you were really scared and you call yourself weak and you say that you couldn't do anything to help your brothers and sister and your mum and all those things, but actually I think you were brave, you survived it, you were courageous." And then there's this quote, I think it's Muhammad Ali. He said there is no bravery without fear. Like
Mm,
if you're not scared when you do something, it isn't brave, you're just doing something at that point.
mm.
You
Yeah.
know, so we have to be brave to make them big decisions, to leave that company, to leave that person, to make those big changes in life. We have to make those decisions. We have to accept that it's going to be difficult, and we have to align with what's true, whether we like it or not. And that's what I
Yeah.
find is the consistent sort of markers for people when it comes to change that generally holds them back. That they're generally not doing one of those three things, and I'm sure others will have more to add to that. Maybe
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We were so the last episode I had Gail Muller on, and we were talking about when you are not aligned with your core values, so your own truths, when you're working against them, it's like you're just constantly running into a wall. Yeah,
Mm.
and you don't know why everything feels bad. Like it's like the side effects of working against your core values is it can almost make you ill physically, and you feel depressed and everything's wrong, and then blame comes in and all of this stuff. It's understanding who you are and what it is you love and what it is you're passionate about and how you are as a person, and then working with that is so important. And as soon as we start working against that, that's when everything starts. That's when bad luck comes into the
Yeah.
equation, because you're creating that.
I mean, there are many times in my career, in my life, where I've experienced something that feels like failure. And
Mm,
how I pull myself out of that is I ask myself, was I true to my values? Was I true to my values? Did I stick to my values and it got to a point where I had to compromise my values in order to move forward and I was unwilling to do that? Well, that's not failure.
mm-hmm.
That's not failure. So people say, "Oh, you know, you tried to do this thing and it didn't work." Yeah, because in order for it to work, I had to do something that went against my values and I wasn't going to do that. Yeah, but you know, if you'd done that, it would have worked. Yeah, I know, but I wasn't going to compromise my values to do it. So I didn't
Mm,
fail. I just realized that that wasn't the way I wanted to do things. And there are many ways
yeah.
to accomplish the same goal. And sometimes you get to a point and you go, "Oh, I didn't realize that was what was actually happening in that room. I don't want to be in that room. See you later."
Yeah.
You know, and I've done a
Brilliant.
bit of, you know, I've been invited into some circles that people would be like, "Wow, that's amazing, rare, rare, rare." And then I get there and I'm like, "You're a dick."
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just like, "I don't
Yeah.
really want to be around you. See you later." You
Yeah.
know,
uh,
that's that.
it's amazing. It almost makes you makes you feel dirty when you start going against your values. And and I just want to take it back to that fear aspect as well. Is because I love that. And it's actually when I was at my lowest in my life, it was because I was running away from that fear. Yeah.
Mm,
I was running from that fear of something, so I was going in the opposite direction. But like you said, having that acceptance of fear and almost working in spite of it and said, yes, I'm scared right now, but screw fear, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to keep moving forwards. And fear can also, it can also fuel you in a sense. It's almost a motivator. It's I almost sometimes I link it towards hunger. When you feel hungry, um, physically hungry, it's a so if you ever do like a big trying to lose a load of weight, sometimes when you're trying to lose a load of weight and you feel hungry, you feel motivated to move and act because your body's like, give me food, well, I want some food. And then fear is the same, it will motivate you to move. It's just learning how to utilize that and take that energy and use it right. How would you help somebody who is scared and has that fear and use it in the right way? Because it's man, it's hard. It's
Mm.
so hard.
I think nothing's more scarier than the unknown. And I
Hmm.
think quite often real fear can come anxiety, they might well call it. I heard the definition of anxiety, and it was the awareness of infinite possibilities. And there's something in that, right? Because a lot of people think that when they're scared and they don't know how to move forward, they feel like they're stuck in a box with no doors. But
Mm,
actually, what you'll often find is that's not true. You've actually been dropped in a desert and you could go any direction. That's way more
mm,
scary. It's like,
yeah,
which direction do I go? Like, which one? What if
yeah,
I go the wrong way? What if this happens? Which means that, oh, it's just safer just to stay here. Now I'm scared stiff, you know,
yeah.
and I'm not going to move. I'm just going to stay here.
Mm,
So for me, it's about really, I don't know how you'd put breaking it down, bringing it back to what's true again, and
mm,
saying to yourself, okay, I don't want to leave this partner because I don't know what my life's going to look like. Yeah, but what's your life like now?
yeah.
What's your life like now? Like, these things are possible. We always weigh over to one side, right? All of the worst things that could possibly happen are going to happen. It's like, well, that's unlikely, right? But what are the good things that could happen? Because what you
Hmm.
focus on grows. And it's about realizing that it's an opportunity to fear is an opportunity to be courageous.
Mm,
And I get it. It doesn't feel courageous. And it might not look pretty like it does in the movies. And there might not be the soundtracks of your life playing in your head while it happens. It might be chaos and awful. But
yeah.
I can't help but realize something. One of my core values is suffering. And everyone goes, what the hell, you weirdo, right? Now, that doesn't mean that I go looking for suffering. I don't go, oh, where's the suffering? I'm not a masochist or a sadist or anything like that. But what it means is, whether I like it or not, this is true. Every time I've suffered, something valuable has come from it. I hate
Mm,
that. I hate that. I wish that wasn't true. There's so many
mm,
situations where I would love to take things back, but there was a study done, and I forget who did it and what it's called. I'd love to remember in this moment, but I can't. And they asked a large amount of people that if they could go back to a traumatic event in their life and take it away, but by taking it away, they'd also take away the wisdom, would they do it? And almost
mm,
all of them said no. When they'd stopped to think about it and they'd thought about all of the consequences of that awful thing and all of the lessons they'd learned and all of the things that happened as a result of it, as much as they hate it, they
mm.
wouldn't take it back.
Yeah. I mean,
So fear is an opportunity. What if it's not fear? What if it's excitement? What if it's the realization that you're about to do something and it's actually going to move the needle in your life? You know,
yeah.
what if that's what's going on? There's so many different ways to look at things, and we always seem to choose as humans the way that doesn't help.
Yeah.
That doesn't help. So I don't know if that answers the question. It's sort of hashing it out there. It's a good question.
No, mate, you did. You did. I like that. And it's packaging fear as potentially another feeling is also quite a handy little tool, I think. Being able to package it as maybe this isn't fear, maybe this is excitement, because the feeling's the same for both. Um, in terms of how your body reacts.
Mate, I'm an emotional investigator. What I
Mhm.
do is I investigate what people's emotions are telling them. And what's interesting to me is quite often people misinterpret our emotions are messages. They're the way that our soul speaks to us and tells us what we really want. We always know deep down, but we become very well practiced at ignoring it or changing it so that it, like a lot of time when people talk about acceptance with me, they say, "Oh, I'm practicing it. I'm working on it. I'm wrestling with acceptance." And I say, well, there you go. There's the problem, because acceptance is not a doing word. And if you're doing anything to accept, then you are trying to change it so you can accept. Again, what is true? So emotions are there to tell us how we really feel about something. And then we then get to make a decision about what we're going to do next based off of that new information that we have. But most of the time we gaslight ourselves and tell ourselves that we shouldn't feel a certain way, or we don't feel a certain way because that's easier in some way, or means they don't have to have that uncomfortable conversation or let somebody down or do something that feels difficult, So quite often, an emotion investigator, I'm trying to work out what the emotions are, and emotions are tricky. Emotions like anger are fun. People go, "Oh, I'm angry." And I say, well, that could be a secondary emotion to a primary emotion, whereas a primary emotion is emotion about an event, and a secondary emotion is an emotion about an emotion, right? So now, cool. What are you angry about? Well, I'm angry because this thing happened, and they tell a long story, and it turns out they were very disappointed. So instead of being disappointed, they decided to be angry.
Yeah.
And so now let's move away from the anger and towards the disappointment. Okay, what can we do about it? Nothing. Oh, good. So now we're at the point where we can accept it. But instead of trying to accept anger, good luck with that. We're trying to accept disappointment instead. So I don't know whether that's helpful, but
no, it is. It's like trying to delve deeper into what is really going on. I think as humans naturally, well, not even naturally, just society now is very reactive to things, and so because we don't have an understanding of our emotions and how and also how we react and why we're reacting, because we're not pausing to take that second to look and go, okay, why am I starting to feel like this? And we're just going headlong into the reaction.
a better way to go about that, or another way to go about that, is like I said, I try to stay away from the word why, because why is quite an introspective question, and quite often, and it's annoying, most people don't know why. So a better way to go at it is what. Instead of why am I feeling like this, what is causing me to feel this way? What's going on here? Because that's a more exploratory, investigative question. It leads less to blame and more to causality. Like, what's happening here? What are the situations that are causing me that are resulting in me feeling this way? Who are the
I love
players?
that.
What are the places? What are the things that are going on here that are causing me to feel this way? And can I eliminate them, change them, or something? It's not.
That's Yeah, I completely get that. No, that's also thank you for that piece of advice, because I'm going to take that with me. I'm stealing that one. That's something
Not
I
mine.
can.
What do you think?
Yeah, well, no information is anybody's, is it really? We're all just learning from
Well,
other
that's my
people.
job, is to share. My job is to share
Yeah,
information. I'm not going to stamp on it and say it's Johnny's, because why would I do that?
yeah, exactly. In terms of that emotional intelligence, do you think? I don't know if it's emotional intelligence, just understanding our own emotions. Do you think that just life, I guess present life nowadays has a part to play in that, because we spend less and less time being present and being just with ourselves. There's distractions everywhere. There's everything going on. Do you think that has a part to play in that, and there's a way around that? Why do you think that people struggle with their understanding their emotions and what's going on?
I think because people try to understand situations more than they do the way it made them feel. So
Mm,
I have this analogy that I use with clients, and it's like you wake up in the morning and you get in your car, put your seat warmers on, you got a nice hot coffee,
hmm
you got your favorite tunes on, it's a nice clear day, and you've got a nice straight road ahead of you, and there's no traffic. Doing brilliantly.
mm,
Life is good. You're okay. You're driving along and you hit a pothole.
mm,
Now you're completely out of control of the vehicle. And it doesn't
hmm
matter what you do, Doesn't matter what you do, you cannot regain control of this vehicle. You're now spiraling towards a dangerous situation, and at some point there's an impact, things are damaged, and people are hurt. That is an
Mm-hmm.
analogy for how it can be to be emotionally triggered. You know,
Mm.
you're going along in life and something happened to you in your past and it was really horrible. And as a result of that, you experienced a certain emotion. Now, every time you encounter even a minor amount of that emotion, you have a similar reaction because you have not processed it. So
Mm.
these might be people, right? There might be people that show you certain behaviors and they trigger you, right? And now all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden you're swearing and you're acting like a crazy person. That's the out of
Mm.
control element. People go, calm down. Now's not the time. When you've hit the pothole and you're spiraling out of control. And the reason why this is such a good analogy, that's not the time to regain control. You don't have that autonomy. You have now
No.
lost control, and there is going to be damage and impact because of that. So what can we
Mm-hmm.
do? Well, we can say to ourselves, okay, I know there's a pothole there now. What does that pothole represent? It represents feeling disrespected. Okay, so every time I feel disrespected, I have this reaction. I need to work on that, but I also need some tools to help this situation in current time. So what does that mean? That means that I can learn to spot disrespect. I can learn to
Mm.
spot the people that are likely to disrespect me and prepare for that. I can
Mm.
avoid disrespect by going, I'm not in the headspace for you today. I'm going to avoid you
Mm.
today. You can start to work on the problem in the background, which means you start to adapt emotional regulation tools. And there are many, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole time you're working towards, okay, what caused this feeling of disrespect? You know, what's the bias and the perception and the meaning I applied to it? You know, what's the event that
Mm.
happened that made me feel this emotion? Because as far as I can see, and I wrote about this in my book, and it's one of those brave theories that I'm putting out in the world, and that is I think
Mm-hmm.
that at a base level, that the two biggest motivators for our behavior in our life are two things: fear and need. We are
Mm.
either scared of something happening or not happening, or we need something to happen. Now, I mean need in its truest form. It's you need it. So if we look at it like fear and need, you know, when we're younger, we have a need. Our need doesn't get met. We have an emotional reaction to that. We then apply a meaning to that emotional reaction, and it becomes a belief system. Or we go
Mm.
the other way. We have a need. We feel we get that need met. We feel emotionally validated, and we then apply a need to a meaning to that. If that's the
Mm.
process that happens between fear and need, then we're always going to try and move towards one or the other, right?
Yes.
Autonomously, whether we like it
Mm-hmm.
or not. So that, and I think that's what happens when we get emotionally triggered. I think that there's a fear or a need that's not getting met, or there's an emotional experience that we applied meaning to in the past, and all of a sudden, explosion.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
us, for me, emotions are messages, and if we learn to look into them deeper, if we explore them, if we investigate them, they'll tell us what we don't know, and then
Mm.
we can do something with that. You know. Anyway, I feel like I
Yeah.
just went off on one there, but
Mate, I never apologize or worry about going off on one. Is you're giving valuable information, and that's the main thing. Um, you talked a bit there about having systems, protocols, principles, whatever it is in place. Do you think that's important when it comes to behavioral change? Having these strategies ready to use when need be in your toolkit. And also, do you have any that you'd recommend? I know you've got
um,
your 4 A's, but I
y-
imagine there's more there.
yeah. Well, the main bulk of my book that I've written is something called the MADE principles,
Mm.
MADE, MADE principles, and that stands for, it's an acronym for morals, ambitions, drivers, and
Mm-hmm.
environments. Now, I don't fundamentally believe that, and it's a very American approach. I think probably going to offend lots of Americans now, but there you go. And that is that there's a system or a method, and if you apply it, it will work to everybody in their life. And I don't think that's
Mm.
true. Such what I like about the MADE principles, and the reason why I put them together, is because they are principles, and it's
Mm.
up to you to decide what they mean.
Yes.
You are in control of that. And what that means is that if you really want to develop yourself, if you really want to change, and I'm not talking about small changes, although that's included, I'm talking about overall changing yourself from one thing into another thing, to
Mm,
moving towards the person you want to become, then you need to look into your morals. Or no, you don't need to do anything. It will be helpful for you to look into your morals. And what that means is look into your core values, investigate
mm,
what do you value, what is important to you, what are the things.
mm,
Your values are your moral compass. They direct you in life. They tell you what is for you and what isn't. So if you
mm,
don't know, if I ask you what they are and you don't know what they are, then that's a problem. That means
mm,
you don't really know yourself. And if you don't really know yourself, you're unpredictable. If you're unpredictable, you could do anything, and you probably will. And the other
mhm,
part of that is your belief systems. What are the things that you believe that limit you in life, your limiting beliefs? And what are the things that are your growth beliefs, the things that move you
mm,
towards what you want to become? So that's your morals. Your ambitions are, what do you want? And people will say a whole bunch of things. And I say, no, 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 no. What do you really want? What do you
mm,
really want? What is it you want that you little bit don't want to say because it doesn't sound quite as nice as you'd like it to? What is it?
yeah,
Tell me,
yeah,
because that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
you really want. That's the truth. Yeah. We can
Mm,
pretty it up if you want, but let's get to it. What is it? What is the root of it?
yeah,
What is it? And then because again, that's your direction. That's your reason for getting up. That's it. And you're right there. If everybody needs some sort of ambition in life, even if it's a really simple ambition, it's still an ambition. That doesn't mean you've got
mm,
to become a multi-millionaire and own a massive company. It can just be your ambition is to have this and have that and to live life this way. Great, wonderful. Um, then there's your drivers. What drives you? Why do you want what you want? Because one day it's going to get really, really difficult. And why you want to do it is helpful. When I used to work as a PT, I used to ask that question: what's driving your decision to lose weight? And they would say, I hate myself. And I'll say, great. So when it gets really difficult and you have to make a really tough decision, is I hate myself going to help you? No. Right.
no,
Then what if we just learn to respect ourselves a little bit more? Well, I can't respect myself. Yeah, maybe that's because you don't know yourself. Maybe we need to get to know you. We need to understand your morals and
mm,
really get to understand that. We have to understand what you want so that your mind doesn't keep changing and you keep feeling like you're collecting failures. And then the
mm,
last one is the environments. The people, places, and things in your life influence you, whether you like it or
mm,
not. There
yeah,
are people in your life that you wake up in the morning, you got whole bunch of work to do, and then you got that mate who you love. He's great, but he's like, let's go to the pub, and you're like, yeah, that does sound better. And before you know it, you're
yeah,
in the pub. And that's not helpful, right? So there's people in your life that really aren't working towards your goal like you are, and then there's places that you go that always make you feel a bit crappy or tear you down or make you feel like you're not good enough. And then there are things, as you pointed out earlier, mobile phones. When I was reading my book, it was a nightmare because it was hard
mm,
writing a book. Sorry, reading my book. When I was writing my book, um, it was hard writing a book. And if any notification of any kind went off on my phone, I was into it. Like, I was just
yeah,
like,
man, yeah,
anything to not do what I don't want to do right now. So if
mm,
you look into those four areas, those principles, the made principles, I don't know if you can do that without changing.
mm,
Just
yeah,
don't think you can. I think you
amazing,
have to, in a sense. So
yeah,
yeah, that's my offering.
yeah, that's amazing. So, we normally ask every coach that comes on. At RDA, we're big fans of giving people something tangible they can do in the next 24 hours um, to improve themselves in some way. And obviously, we talked a lot about behavioral change today, and you're big on actions. So, what is just one small thing somebody can do within the next 24 hours? And that might just be looking at the maid and doing that. But what's something they can do within the next 24 hours to help change if that's what they're wanting to do?
I think notice what you notice. Just become an observer for your life for the next 24 to 48 hours and just note, don't judge, don't attach. Just
Mm,
notice what you notice about your life. Notice the incongruence within your life. What are you constantly telling people that you're doing, but you're actually not doing it? Like,
yeah, yeah.
because that's interesting. you know
Mm,
I think I don't have any answers for anybody. I'm not I'm not this guru that has like all the answers and tells people how to live their life, but you do. You are
Hmm.
absolutely the expert on your life. There is nobody that knows everything that you know about you. Nobody,
Yeah.
not even your partner. So if there's parts of you that you didn't know were true, there are things that you're doing that you didn't realize you were doing. That feels important.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
become an observer. Just watch yourself for 48 hours and take it seriously and note down what you notice about yourself that you're doing and not doing, because that'll start to tell you a little bit of information that you might not have known. Who knows?
Brilliant, mate. I love that. I think that's brilliant. So everybody listening, go take that away. But Johnny, where can we find you? What you got going on? What's happening?
Well, like I said, I'm pushing to get this book published. I'm speaking to a few publishers at the moment, so that's exciting. But really, I have a podcast that has got a back catalogue of, I think, about 84 episodes now. The Self Development Podcast. I've had the privilege of speaking to some really interesting people, specialists that know a lot about a certain topic, and
Amazing.
pass along helpful information. People that have been through really difficult things and learn something from them. So that's good.
Mhm.
My social media is the Self Development Coach, and that should be consistent across all platforms, as well as my website, which is the selfdevelopmentcoach.co.uk. I've started writing a lot more articles recently. I just released one on perfectionism that people have seemed to enjoy, and I'm going to be pushing out a lot more. And yeah, I do a lot of public speaking. A lot of the time, I'm being asked to go into schools now, businesses, charities, and just to talk about my ideas and how they can be implemented within companies, charities, schools, students. I spoke at a school locally recently, and that had a bigger impact on me than I would have thought it would have done. I feel like in the pandemic, in this age that we live in now, that kids have really struggled.
Mm.
In human development, there's a stage, I think, between say 12 and 16 where we learn our behaviors and we learn the person we're going to become by interaction. So me and you have interactions, and I cross a certain line, you put me back in my place, and I learn something, and I start to become that person. And I think with that 2 years that we were out with the pandemic, I think a lot of kids was that was stolen from them. And worse still, I think that we were offered connection
Mm.
through the internet, when actually that's not connection, that mimics connection. So now what we have is you have a bunch of people that don't really understand the rules of engagement when it comes to communication and interpersonal stuff. We also got these people thinking that they really know someone when they don't. They just know them
Yes.
online. So then when they meet them, they're a bit too tactile, they're a bit this or a bit that, and then problems
Yeah.
develop. And a lot of the time I found that these kids in the schools, they were coming up to me going, and this is sad. This is really sad. One of them asked me, they said they've watched a lot of YouTube videos on how to make friends, but nothing's working.
Oh
Broke,
man.
broke my heart. Absolutely broke my heart. And it was just like, I feel like I can help with that, and I want to. So,
Great.
if there are schools out there that want to get involved in that, then I'd be more than happy to do that. That would be great. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Hopefully that wasn't too
Mate.
long of an answer.
No, mate, that's great. I mean, awesome. It sounds like you're doing amazing work. Yes, we'd love to hear from you again at some point. And when your book's out, hit us up. I want to read it
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
definitely. That'd be great. Thank you, mate.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you again.